you all to our fourth session of the day. Again, we have three presenters. Everybody's in the building. So we'll all be doing an on-campus, as we say, presentation. First of all, this afternoon, I would like to introduce Binh Tran-Namand. Binh was our keynote speaker last year for those that were present for the QTRS, but Binh happened to present online. So we're very, very lucky to have him here today with us. Binh will be talking about a paper that he has compiled with Michael Walpole on tax dispute resolution in Australia, the final frontier.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Good afternoon, everybody. Actually, it's my first face-to-face conference since the COVID outbreak, and it's also my first in-person attendance at this Queensland Tax Researchers Symposium. In addition to the beautiful weather and a very beautiful venue, I found that the conference has been beautifully run, efficiently run. I think the session has been very intensive, interactive, and beneficial. A bonus for myself is to see some of my former ATAC students so long ago now. So I would like to start by thanking and congratulating the conference organizers, Law Future Center, Brad, Melanie, thank you very much. The paper is a work on progress by Michael Walpole and myself. Michael is enjoying himself in the UK, so it's even for me to email myself here. This is part of our work funded by ARC Discovery Grant. First of all, about the title of the paper, I grew up with the now called Star Trek series, so you can see some of the subject there. I have a lot of slides, and it's not possible for me to go through the 20 or so slides of the less than 20 minutes. So I will be doing a bit of cherry picking and focusing on the slide which I think that is maybe most relevant to you. Okay. I'm talking about Star Trek, but even during the Star Trek time, they don't have the kind of technology.
Yeah, the old on button.
Okay. Yeah, here's my I will focus. I will ignore part 3 because most of you will be familiar with the tax dispute resolution process in Australia. I focus on 4, which is our contribution to the literature. Okay. All right, just a bit of motivation why we want to consider that topic. Obviously, tax disputes are very frequent, unavoidable, and as we argue, sometimes desirable. In fact, we will argue it is desirable, and I will argue, try to show that the level of tax disputes in Australia and elsewhere is under the optimal level. It's so expensive, it's so stressful, but we need more of that. And I will demonstrate my case a bit later. It is tax dispute resolution, obviously an integral aspect of the modern tax system operation, intersecting the tax administration and lawmaking, especially in common law countries like Australia. At the same time, we are motivated by the fact that tax dispute resolution is perhaps the least studied aspect of the tax system. If you look at for example, look at the optimal theory of taxation, for example, completely disregard tax disputes and tax dispute resolution. If you look at the criteria for tax policy and tax administration, they're not there either, except possibly in some law study of tax system. Even empirical study on tax compliance costs shed very little insight into that issue. I have done a bit of compliance cost study myself in my younger days. The trouble with that is that when most of the time with the support from tax office, which is essential, when the tax office gave us a sample, they have already excluded all of the taxpayers who would be in dispute with them or were in dispute with them. So we didn't capture any tax dispute data in our study. And that is true for most of the compliance cost studies. So this is very, very little study area. So the scope of the paper is to take provide critical stock-taking review of the literature on tax dispute resolution. And as I said, the key point of the paper is to demonstrate that the observed level of tax dispute is below the socially optimal level of tax dispute. We focusing on tax dispute between the taxpayers and tax administrator. There can be a tax dispute between two taxpayers too, but that's not observed. And we are also focusing on external dispute resolution beyond the ATO. The empirical data focus on Australian situation, although the sort of theoretical argument apply broadly to other similar countries as well. Okay, and all right. So why do we want to pay attention? Why do we need to pay attention to tax dispute? And they just simply dispute in general. So I think that there are several reasons which we think that tax dispute resolution of tax disputes require our tax researchers special attention. First of all, we recognize tax laws are generally more complex than most of the civil and commercial laws. Tax law quite complex. There's a lot of evidence that even judges think that tax law is too complex. So what hope do we have as just ordinary taxpayer? One of the issue about tax dispute resolution is that there's the reversals of role. Generally, in the court of law, the ATO would be the plaintiff, arguing that you taxpayer defendant are not doing the right thing. But in fact, in tax dispute resolution, the role has been reversed. And the taxpayer play the role of the plaintiff, and the burden of proof rests on the taxpayers. The taxpayer has not only to show that the tax office, the taxpayer is required to demonstrate in the court that the tax commissioner assessment is not correct. So that is the, and also that is not consistent with the principle of presumption of innocence. Okay. You know, in the case of Australia, taxpayers who are in dispute, the tax office will be required to pay at least 50% of the dispute before they can argue their case anywhere. Obviously, there is asymmetry of the resource availability. The tax office in Malta has more resources than most taxpayers. However, there is asymmetry of information. Taxpayers know their business a lot more better than the tax officer do. So the asymmetry of resources is moderated by the asymmetry of information. Next, I think that tax dispute resolution lead to case laws with high level of generality and applicable to many other taxpayers, unlike civil dispute, which is applicable only to the people in the case. Tax dispute can have implications for all other taxpayers. And further, the two parties are unevenly positioned in terms of their ability to influence the tax law after the court decision has been handed down. There have been many cases in which the tax office have been able to change it or suggest the tax law to be changed after a court case. Taxpayers do not have that kind of option. And in short, we argue that tax disputes differ from other civil and commercial disputes in very fundamental aspects. And it also gives us all sorts of tax justice, which I will briefly mention in the final part of the paper. I don't think I will talk more about that because I think this is it's quite textbook. So what I do is just show you the diagram to show that in Australia, in principle at least, we have a very comprehensive tax dispute resolution system. We first have a dispute at the internal level. Then if the taxpayer are not happy with the tax ATO decision, they could either take them to the AAT or to the federal court, and all that leading all the way to the high court. Okay, so that is a fairly standard textbook. You can find it in any diagram in any of the law textbook. I got it from I think the one by Michael. I think that the other diagram looks better, but they're really conflict interesting. Don't tell Michael that. Okay, but I think that it's interesting to look at some of the numbers. The tax office have been in the past a bit more open about the supply of data in that regard. In recent years, they have stopped producing any statistics in that in the tax disputes. Based on I got most of the number from a publication by the tax office called Your Case Matters, and according to that, if you look at the period of 2011-12 to 2014 and 15, there's been a clear reduction in the absolute and percentage case of disputes. If you look at 34,000 of 15 million, reduced to 26,000 over 30.5 million tax return. So very clear reduction. But whether a clear reduction is due to high cost of tax dispute or due to clearer law, it remains to be seen, to be analyzed. In 2010 and 11, which is the last year when the data is available, only 3% of taxpayers sought independent review of ATO decisions, so very small percentage. And majority of them went to the AAT to resolve the dispute with the tax office. Only a small fraction that taxpayers proceed to the court. Okay. That is basically the situation in Australia. And soon I will try to demonstrate my case by borrowing the insight from economic analysis. We know that in the situation when the supply of a good has external benefits, the unregulated market may undersupply this good. For example, we know that education has a lot of positive benefits, and the free market alone will undersupply education. So that's just by global intervention. Similarly, I would borrow that kind of idea to show that the observed level is below the socially observed. So to do that, we focus on genuine tax disputes, which eventually reach the judicial stage. There's a lot of, if you look at the disputes at the AAT level, there's a lot of them are very trivial. A lot of them due to their taxpayer misunderstanding of the law, or they just want to. So I don't want to be sound like a mean person, but a lot of them are elderly taxpayers have little thing to do, and like to take their little dispute to that. But we're talking around here about the serious dispute that may clarify the law, not only now but to the future, not to the taxpayer but to all the taxpayers. That kind of dispute we are referring to, and that is surely undersupplied in the current situation. Okay, we recognize that there are many stakeholders in the tax dispute resolution process: the taxpayers, the ATO, the advisor, the judge, and the society at large. So what I will do is to look at the private demand and supply for tax disputes from the taxpayer point of view, because it is the taxpayer that initiated the process, and we'll compare that with the social demand and supply. And so to do so, I just qualitatively make some look at the benefits and the cost of tax disputes, both from the taxpayer's perspective as well as from the social perspective. And from the taxpayer perspective, there are certain costs: time losses, advisor if you require representation, pocket expenses like meal, transport, and so on. Okay, mostly tax advisor fee, and the benefit is the case, the outcome of the tax dispute is by no means certain. So we only can talk about expected benefit, which is equivalent to the subjective probability of the taxable winning multiplied by the present value of the tax liability reduction. Why do I mean, or what do I mean by present value? Because the taxpayer may reduce tax liability not only now, but maybe in the future as well. So it's a stream of value to it. So we can recapture by using present value. Okay. So and the taxpayers will evaluate the cost against the benefit and decide to proceed to the court or not for any given subjective probability of winning. Okay, so we can take that. That is from the taxpayer perspective. From the social perspective, we can the cost involve the sum of the opportunity costs incurred by the taxpayer, the administrator, and the court. Of course, there are advisor fees, but tax advisor fees have been absorbed into the cost of taxpayers or tax administrator already. Okay. Now, what is the benefit of a solution of tax dispute to the society? The transfer between the taxpayers and the tax administrator cancel out. If whoever wins, someone will have to pay, and so the some positive, some negative, they cancel out in the aggregate. What is remaining net benefit of a cost of tax dispute is the fact that the law is clear and it can be applied with more precision from now and definitely in the future until any further law changes. So that benefit. So now if you look at that.
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I think that I can do that. So here I just set down the what we call the marginal cost and marginal benefit from the taxpayer perspective and from the society perspective. And I go straight to the diagram. I think that diagram, that's a very simple diagram. It's kind of first year economic diagram taught in the case of what we call external externalities. When externality is present, the market is not working well by leaving it alone. So we need some sort of intervention. You can see that the expected marginal social benefit is a lot higher than the expected marginal private benefit at any given level of tax dispute because the clarity of the law. And that gap is quite large. And so that, and the other one is the marginal social cost is also higher than the marginal private cost because in addition to the private cost, there will be other costs incurred by the tax administrator and by the court. So that is the situation. And you can see that without if you leave it to the taxpayer by itself, the level of dispute will be at E1. But the socially optimal level found by equating marginal cost and marginal benefit of tax dispute is at E2, which is decisively higher than E1. So obviously, leaving it to myself, there will be an undersupply of tax disputes. It sounds very strange. Who wants tax disputes apart from the tax advisor? But anyhow, there is, of course, the government recognizing that. So there's favorable mechanism to improve to the number or by reducing the cost to the private taxpayers. For example, like small claim tribunal, one way to reduce cost, or the test case program by the tax office. So there are mechanisms to try to remove E1 to E2. So this diagram justifies all of the action by the tax office as well as a tribunal in promoting, in fact, more number of cases. So to conclude, I just quickly go to the last section here. As a view, we talk about other things as well. They're quite unrelated, but tax dispute have given rise to a number of justice issues. The first one is called the procedural justice. How is the taxpayer treated during the period of dispute? The second one is about the effectiveness of accessibility. There is a effective mechanism in Australia, but whether they are effective or not, whether taxpayers can freely take their dispute to the court. The third issue is about the neutrality of the judicial decision. It is whether the decision is neutral of the amount of resources that the taxpayers have access to. So does it mean richer or wealthier taxpayer will get more in on average, more favorable decision than poorer taxpayer at the same level of sensitivity. And finally, an issue of the correctness of the judgment in terms of whether it is consistent with parliamentary intention. So thank you very much for your patience.